They say love blinds you to the red flags waving right in front of your face. For years, I thought Lena and I had the kind of love that could withstand anything. I believed it was unshakable, built on trust, and fortified by years of devotion. But sometimes the cracks in the foundation are invisible until the whole thing comes crashing down. Lena and I met in the summer of 2016. She wasn't like the other women I'd dated. She was understated, natural, and so utterly unaware of her own beauty that it was almost endearing. She had grown up in a household dominated by brothers, her parents raising her like one of the boys. Feminine touches like makeup, dresses, or jewelry were foreign concepts to her. She didn't believe in pampering herself or being seen as desirable. Not because she didn't want to, but because she'd been taught that those things didn't matter. That's where I came in. I wanted to show her she was worth more than she realized. I showered her with gifts, not just material ones, but the kind that build confidence. I bought her flowers just because, helped her pick out clothes that made her feel elegant, and told her every day how stunning she was. Slowly, I watched her blossom into a woman who finally believed she was enough. For years, our relationship had its ups and downs like any other, but we always rebounded. Lena was my anchor, my best friend, my partner. When I proposed to her in 2020, there wasn't a doubt in my mind. The wedding in 2022 was everything we'd dreamed of. Our closest friends and family gathered to celebrate us. After we got married, our bond seemed even stronger. I thought we were unbreakable, but cracks in the foundation don't appear overnight. They form slowly, over time, in places you can't see. Lena started to pull away from me, little by little. It wasn't obvious at first. Small moments of distance here and there, an awkwardness when we touched, or a lack of closeness in the way she held my hand. I chalked it up to the stress of married life, convinced we'd find our rhythm again. By 2023, we started couples counseling to address the growing distance. I thought we'd crack the code on our issues, finding ways to reconnect and rebuild. By mid-2024, we were better than ever, or so I believed. When the opportunity for a six-figure promotion at her job came up, I encouraged Lena to go for it. She didn't think she was qualified, but I believed in her. I helped her prep for the interview and celebrated when she got the job. But the position required her to spend a month in Colorado for training. It's no big deal, I told her. We're solid. We can handle the distance. She left in July 2024, and I was proud of her, excited for what this new role would mean for her future. But when she came back in August, something was different. Lena was physically home, but mentally, she was somewhere else. Her warmth was replaced with indifference. She stopped laughing at my jokes, dismissed my affection, and seemed more engrossed in her phone than in me. At first, I thought it was the stress of the new job, but then there were the late-night messages. Every evening, she'd sit on the couch with a glass of wine, her face illuminated by her phone as she typed furiously. I asked her who she was talking to, and she casually replied, "My boss, Matt. Just work stuff." It didn't feel like work. The conversations dragged on for hours, punctuated by laughter and the occasional coy smile. I told her it made me uncomfortable. She brushed me off. "You're overthinking it," she said, her voice tinged with irritation. "It's harmless." Looking back, I should have trusted my instincts. Instead, I buried the discomfort, convincing myself that Lena wouldn't betray me. But the cracks were there, widening every day. And when they finally split open, they revealed a darkness I never saw coming. The moment you realize your partner might not be the person you thought they were isn't a single, dramatic revelation. It's a series of subtle, gut-wrenching moments that chip away at your trust until you're left questioning everything. For me, that moment began at a barbecue. By late August, Lena's behavior had become impossible to ignore. The late-night texts with her boss, Matt, had become a nightly ritual accompanied by her ever-present glass of wine. She'd laugh at something he said, then switch the topic whenever I tried to ask about it. The distance between us wasn't just emotional anymore. It felt like a canyon I couldn't cross. One weekend, we hosted a barbecue with some of her coworkers, including Matt. I had never met him before, but the moment he arrived, I could feel the tension. He was charismatic, the kind of guy who knew how to command a room with his easy smile and confident demeanor. Lena seemed to orbit around him, her laughter a little too loud, her attention glued to his every word. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was just being insecure. But as the evening wore on, I noticed the way she touched his arm when she spoke to him, the way their conversations seemed to exclude everyone else. They weren't just colleagues. There was something else there, something I didn't want to name. It happened after most of the guests had left. Lena and Matt stayed behind, nursing their drinks by the fire pit. I had gone inside to clean up, but when I came back outside, they were gone. At first, I thought they'd stepped out for a cigarette or to grab something from the house. But then I heard them, muffled voices and laughter coming from the side of the yard. I walked around the corner, and there they were. Matt was sitting on a low garden wall, Lena leaning into him, her hand resting lightly on his thigh. They didn't see me at first. Then he reached for her, pulling her closer, his hand disappearing beneath the waistband of her jeans. My breath caught in my throat. They heard me before I could say anything. Lena jumped back like she'd been burned, her face flushed with guilt and alcohol. "Max, it's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice shaky. But it was exactly what it looked like. That night, I confronted her. I demanded answers, demanded to know how long this had been going on. She swore it was a drunken mistake, a one-time lapse in judgment. Matt, of course, played the same card, apologizing profusely and insisting that it meant nothing. But the damage was done. The image of Lena and Matt together burned itself into my mind, and no amount of apologies could erase it. I gave her an ultimatum. No more talking to Matt. No texts, no calls, no contact. She agreed, but her promise felt hollow, and I was right to doubt her. The next few weeks were a blur of anger, confusion, and half-hearted attempts at reconciliation. Lena insisted she wanted to fix things, but her actions told a different story. I started finding traces of their conversations, deleted messages, forgotten emails, open browser tabs that pointed to a fake Snapchat account. They hadn't stopped talking. They'd just gotten better at hiding it. Every discovery felt like another knife in the back. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The woman I had built my life around was lying to my face, and I didn't know how to stop it. One night, in a fit of anger, I packed a bag and left. I told Lena I needed space, but the truth was I didn't know if I could come back. I drove aimlessly, staying in cheap motels, trying to make sense of what had happened. Part of me wanted to leave for good, to file for divorce and never look back. But another part of me, stubborn, hopeful, stupid, wanted to believe that we could fix this. A week later, Lena called me. Her voice was soft, pleading. She said she missed me, that she wanted to work things out. "Come home," she said. "Let's start over." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the woman I had loved for so long was still in there somewhere, beneath the lies and the betrayal. So I went back. When I walked through the door, Lena was waiting for me with open arms. She cleaned the house, lit candles, and even bought me my favorite wine. She kissed me like she meant it, and for a moment, I let myself forget everything. We made love that night, and for the first time in months, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay. But it was a lie, just like everything else. A few days later, I noticed her phone buzzing constantly. She'd been talking to a female coworker, or so she claimed. But something felt off. The way she guarded her phone, the way her smile lit up when she read a message, it was too familiar. Too much like the way she had been with Matt. I waited until she was asleep, then unlocked her phone. What I found made my stomach drop. Matt had created a fake Snapchat account, posing as her coworker, so they could keep talking. They were still in contact, still lying, still making a mockery of everything I thought we were rebuilding. That night, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. The cracks in our foundation weren't just widening. They were threatening to bring the whole structure down. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to save it anymore. When you think you've hit rock bottom, life has a way of handing you a shovel. I thought discovering Lena's fake Snapchat with Matt was the lowest point of my marriage, the moment that confirmed everything I feared. But what came next turned my world upside down in ways I wasn't prepared for. It started on Halloween, a holiday I've always loved. Lena, not so much. She had made it clear she needed space, so I spent the evening alone. I handed out candy to trick-or-treaters, carved a pumpkin, and tried to ignore the nagging ache in my chest. She was out with coworkers, which by now felt like code for anything but the truth. At one point, I checked my phone out of habit, scrolling through social media mindlessly. That's when I saw it, an Instagram story from a coworker of hers I didn't recognize. The video was blurry, poorly lit, but unmistakable. Lena was in it, laughing with Matt. They were dressed up, she in a sleek black cat costume, him as a devil, his arm draped casually around her waist. The caption read, "Best coworkers ever. #Halloween party." I froze. My hand gripped the phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My mind raced with questions. Where were they? Why had she lied? And how could she so brazenly flaunt her betrayal, knowing I would find out? I couldn't sit there, stewing in anger. I grabbed my car keys and drove aimlessly, unsure if I was looking for her or just trying to escape the walls closing in around me. As I drove, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Lena. "Won't be home late. Don't wait up." The audacity of her words made my blood boil. Not even an attempt at a real excuse. I was so focused on the message that I barely noticed when my GPS pinged with her location, a feature she'd forgotten I still had access to. It wasn't at work or anywhere she'd mentioned. Instead, it was miles away at a venue downtown. Curiosity, anger, and a need for answers drove me to follow the signal. I arrived at an upscale rooftop bar, the kind of place you go to be seen. As I approached the entrance, the sound of laughter and music grew louder, mingling with the cool night air. I hesitated. What would I do if I found her? Confront her here, in front of everyone? Cause a scene? But before I could make a decision, fate made one for me. I caught a glimpse of her near the balcony, illuminated by string lights that gave the scene an almost cinematic quality. She wasn't with Matt. She was with another man entirely, a stranger I didn't recognize. He was tall, sharp-dressed, and leaning in close as she smiled up at him, her hand brushing against his chest. My heart dropped. This wasn't just about Matt anymore. This was something bigger, something darker. Before I could react, someone bumped into me, nearly spilling their drink. I turned to apologize, only to realize it was Matt. He looked just as surprised to see me, his face flickering with panic before he composed himself. "Max," he said smoothly, his voice dripping with mock innocence. "Didn't expect to see you here." I stared at him, the pieces falling into place. "Neither did I," I said coldly. "Where's Lena?" He shrugged, feigning ignorance. "Not sure. Haven't seen her all night." But his lie was written all over his face. Without thinking, I pushed past him and headed toward the balcony. By the time I reached it, Lena and the stranger were gone. The rest of the night was a blur. I searched the venue, my emotions swinging wildly between fury and despair. She wasn't there anymore, and neither was Matt. It was as if they'd vanished into thin air. Defeated, I drove home, my mind replaying the image of her with that man, the way she looked at him, like I didn't exist. When Lena came home hours later, she didn't expect to find me awake. She walked in quietly, trying not to make a sound, but froze when she saw me sitting in the dark. The smell of cheap perfume and alcohol clung to her, and her costume was slightly disheveled, a smear of lipstick on her cheek. "Rough night?" I asked, my voice cold and sharp. She didn't answer, her eyes darting to the wine bottle I'd been drinking from. "Much, save it," I snapped, standing up and heading to the bedroom. "I don't want to hear it." The next morning, I woke to a message from an unknown number. The text read, "You deserve to know the truth. Check the drive." Attached was a link to a shared folder. Against my better judgment, I opened it. What I found sent a chill down my spine. Photos, videos, messages. An entire archive documenting Lena's affair with Matt. There were photos of them at restaurants, on trips, in hotel rooms. Videos of them laughing, holding hands, kissing. Messages that made my stomach churn. But the final video was the one that broke me. It was from the Halloween party, filmed by a mutual coworker who clearly didn't know what they were capturing. It showed Lena with the stranger from the balcony, their faces close, his hand tracing the curve of her back. The way she leaned into him, the way she kissed him, it was the same way she used to kiss me. I closed the folder, my hands trembling. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complete dismantling of the life we'd built together. That day, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to be a bystander in my own life anymore. Lena had built a world of lies, and now it was time for her to live in the ruins. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but in my case, it was served with a side of satire and a bottle of scotch. I wasn't going to yell or throw things or make a dramatic exit. No, Lena didn't deserve my anger. She deserved my creativity. After seeing that folder, I realized something. She hadn't just betrayed me, she'd insulted my intelligence. She thought I was stupid, oblivious, blind to her little extracurricular activities. But the thing about playing with fire is that you never expect the quiet guy in the corner to be holding a gas can. The first step of my plan was to gather my arsenal. Over the next few days, I combed through the evidence, adding my own findings to the mix. Screenshots of texts, location logs, and yes, even receipts for hotel stays she didn't think I'd notice. I wasn't building a case. I was building a masterpiece. But what's an artist without an audience? I started with her inner circle. Her friends were the perfect mix of enablers and gossips, the kind who wouldn't dream of holding her accountable, but would absolutely talk behind her back once the truth came out. I sent them anonymous messages, each one tailored to their specific insecurities. For Sasha, it was a carefully edited video of Lena bragging about how she'd always get the better table because Sasha wasn't as attractive. For her coworker Danny, it was a screenshot of Lena mocking her choice of outfits at work. Within hours, Lena's support system was unraveling faster than her alibis. Next came her family. I didn't go nuclear yet. Instead, I sent her mother a bouquet of flowers with a card that read, "Your daughter's made some bold choices. Thought you'd want to know." A concern party. Alongside it, I included a link to the shared folder. Subtle? Not exactly. Satisfying? Immensely. By the end of the week, I moved to the piece de resistance, her job. Lena's promotion had been her crowning achievement, her ticket to a six-figure salary and an endless supply of business lunches. But her affair with Matt wasn't just personal. It was professional. As her boss, his actions were a clear violation of company policy, and her participation made her complicit. I sent the evidence to HR, complete with timestamps, locations, and enough damning proof to make an attorney weep with joy. The fallout was spectacular. Within days, Matt was placed on leave, pending an investigation. Lena, of course, tried to play the victim, claiming I'd fabricated the evidence out of spite. But HR doesn't care about crocodile tears. They care about liability. She was asked to resign, which is corporate speak for leave before we fire you. While Lena's world crumbled, I played the part of the supportive husband. I cooked dinner, cleaned the house, and listened to her vent about her unfair treatment at work. She didn't suspect a thing, which made her eventual discovery all the sweeter. It came one night while she was scrolling through Instagram. Someone, definitely not me, had anonymously leaked parts of the folder to a popular gossip account. Photos of Lena and Matt at the Halloween party, videos of their late-night rendezvous, and even a clip of her drunkenly calling him the only man who understands me. The caption read, "When coworkers take team bonding too far." She froze, her face draining of color. "Max," she said, her voice shaking. "Did you see this?" I glanced up from my book, feigning disinterest. "See what?" She handed me her phone, her hands trembling. I took my time scrolling through the post, occasionally raising an eyebrow or nodding thoughtfully. "Oh," I said finally. "That's unfortunate." Her face crumpled. "You don't think this could ruin my career, do you?" "Lena," I said, my voice dripping with mock sincerity, "you don't need a career to be happy. Didn't you say once that money isn't everything?" She stared at me, her eyes wide with panic. "But it's not true. None of it is true." "Oh, of course not," I said, handing her the phone. "But you know how people are. They love a good scandal." The next morning, I left her a note on the counter. "I'm filing for divorce. Enjoy the spotlight. Omux." Attached was a flash drive containing the full folder, a list of her lies, and a few carefully chosen words about how I'd moved out. By the time she woke up, I was already gone. The aftermath of my departure played out exactly as I'd planned. Her friends deserted her, her family distanced themselves, and her professional reputation was in shambles. She tried to reach out to me, leaving voicemail after voicemail, each one more desperate than the last. But I didn't respond. I was done being her safety net. Months later, I heard through the grapevine that Lena had started drinking more. Her nights out weren't glamorous anymore. They were sloppy, lonely, and full of regret. She'd lost the sparkle that once made her the center of attention, replaced by the dull haze of someone trying to drown her guilt. And me? I was free. I wasn't the broken man she'd tried to leave behind. I was stronger, sharper, and more determined than ever to build a life she could never touch. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. In my case, it was served with a side of poetic justice and a smirk. They say time heals all wounds, but I've learned it does so with a sense of humor. Watching Lena stumble through the wreckage of her own making was the kind of poetic justice even Shakespeare couldn't dream up. If karma were a person, I'd buy them a drink. After I left, Lena's life spiraled faster than a reality show contestant on their fifth glass of wine. Her glittering facade had cracked, and everyone saw what was underneath. A woman who thought the world owed her a pass for her mistakes. Her attempts to rebuild were, let's just say, less than successful. It started with her trying to win back her friends. You'd think the best co-workers ever from the infamous Halloween party would rally around her. But nope, they abandoned ship faster than a rat-infested cruise liner. Sasha, the queen of Instagram oversharing, posted a cryptic quote the week after I left. Some people are lessons, not blessings. The subtext was clearer than Lena's lies, and the comments were a feeding frenzy. One particularly juicy reply simply said, "Is this about the HR thing? Peace." Spoiler alert, Sasha spilled. Next came her career, or what was left of it. Turns out, luxury event coordination isn't a great industry for someone whose name is now synonymous with office affairs scandal. Word got around, and soon, no one wanted to hire her. She tried freelancing, but her brand had become a punchline. One event planner even told her outright, "I'd hire you, but I don't need my staff wondering which table you'll sleep with." Ouch! But the true masterpiece was her family's reaction. Remember the flowers and the concerned party note I sent to her mom? Well, it turns out her parents didn't take kindly to the news. Her mother, who once called me the son-in-law I always wanted, sent me a letter. It wasn't just an apology. It was a literary masterpiece of regret and thinly veiled disappointment in her daughter. My favorite line? "I don't know where we went wrong with Lena, but we're proud of how you handled this, Max." I framed it. While Lena's life unraveled, mine flourished. I dove into work, rediscovered hobbies I'd neglected, and even started dating again. At first, it felt strange, like learning to walk after years of limping. But then I realized I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. One evening, as I enjoyed a quiet drink on my balcony, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Lena. Her voice was slurred, heavy with alcohol and something else, desperation. "Max," she said, dragging my name out like it was her lifeline. I need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the stars. "About what?" "About us," she said, her words stumbling over each other. "I miss you. I made a mistake and I'm sorry. I really am." There was the apology I'd once begged for, the remorse I thought I needed to move on. But now, hearing it, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even satisfaction. Just a calm indifference. "Lena," I said after a long pause, "I appreciate the apology, but we're not an us anymore." She started to cry, muttering something about how she didn't know who she was without me. It was ironic, really. She'd spent so much time chasing after anyone but me, and now here she was begging for a place in the life she burned to the ground. "I hope you figure that out," I said simply. "Goodbye, Lena." And with that, I hung up. The next morning, I woke up to a clear sky and a clearer conscience. For years, I'd carried the weight of our relationship, bending over backward to make her happy, to make her feel loved. But now, I realized something. I didn't fail her. She failed herself. Months later, I heard through the grapevine that Lena had moved back in with her parents, her drinking spiraling further out of control. She was working part-time at a local bakery, a far cry from the glamorous life she'd once flaunted. Her Instagram had gone silent, replaced by the occasional tagged photo of her looking tired and out of place at social gatherings. And me? I was finally free. Free of her lies, her excuses, and the endless cycle of betrayal. My life wasn't just back on track. It was better than ever. I'd built something stronger, something she could never touch. They say you should never kick someone when they're down, but sometimes you don't have to. Sometimes people trip over their own lies and land face first in the dirt. And when they do, all you have to do is sit back, pour yourself a drink, and toast to their downfall. Here's to Lena. May she find whatever it is she was looking for. And here's to me, better, stronger, and far, far away from the worst woman I've ever met.